They knew it was a lie, but their egos and ambition and self-justification led them to pursue a completely bogus case. And the excuse I got from people when we challenged it was, well, if he has nothing to hide, why isn't he afraid of a DNA test? Real simple. Wesley Snipes was not giving the government any part of his body for any reason, for any purpose, at any time. But I get
why not? Just comply.
Yeah, exactly. That's what they say. And I was talking to this, and it was one of these young women at one of these clubs. And I was like, yeah, I think you're right. I think we need to put a camera in your bedroom and your bathroom just to make sure you're not up to anything sneaky in there. And because, we won't abuse that power, of course. We'll only do it to make sure you're not doing any. And then she was like, wow, hold on, that's excessive. It's like, well, when is it excessive? When is it not? I think it's excessive whenever the government's not entitled to it and they're trying to get it from you.
Yeah, I've got some of that going on in my own thing. And it's wild because people are like, well, why don't you just do this? It's like, because they don't get that. Like they don't have a right to it. And it will never help you. It would never help Wesley Snipes to go turn over some piece of thing to the government. They would. It's like Bronco always talks about with the caliber of the bullet or the self-defense weapon that's used. It's like if it's a high caliber bullet, it's like, well, what they're trying to do is kill him extra hard. And if it's they're trying to be secretive about it. It's like, that's not how guns work. But you can never make the right decision. Government wants your information at any and all opportunities. It's why when you get arrested, even if you're wrongfully arrested, now someone's going to claim that I'm talking about me. I'm not here saying anything of the sort. I'm talking about when I went to jail. Actually, this is a fun story. There was a guy who is in there and the government, the jail workers are sitting there. He starts yelling. He's like, hey, yo, when am I getting out? I got stuff to do. And the jail worker's like, you didn't tell us your name. He's like, that's because you had the wrong guy. You didn't have a right to my name. You didn't have the right to arrest me at all. I told you. You didn't. They're like, well, if you would have just given us your name. He's like, you didn't have it. The judge told you today you didn't have the right to get my name. I was right. And he's like, when do I get out of here? And they said, we'll get around to it. This guy was wrongfully arrested. He was vindicated by a judge. His release order came in hours ago, and he had to wait for me to get booked. And then I think it was another hour and a half to 2 hours after I got booked before this guy got released, because they were just mad that he didn't tell them his name. But I guarantee you that guy got fingerprinted. And eventually his name came up at his, at his hearing when he said, Judge, they got the wrong guy. And they found out that they actually did. So his name and fingerprints are in there. This guy might have already been in the system. I don't know. But if he wasn't, he is now. So now the government has his name, his fingerprints. He's got an arrest record from the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension in Minnesota. And, an employer is going to look that up and be like, you were arrested for this. Like, but they had the wrong guy. I got him. Like, I don't know if that's actually true. You might've just weaseled your way out of it. And it's crazy because the government thinks they're entitled to every piece of information about you that they want. And the only people who kind of buck that trend are people who know their rights and actually stand up for them. But it's fucking scary to do for normal people. You have to be an asshole.
Completely.
And it's hard.
Clients I represent, they're the most innocent. The reason they got to the place they got was because they believed in the system. They complied, they cooperated, they provided everything possible. And then realized the system interprets cooperation as conciliation, as conceding that the state is right and the individual is wrong. They don't take it in the way that ordinary people assume they will. And the number one most common factor in the most innocent people I've ever represented is that they were naive and idealistic about the system. By contrast, clients that I have that don't get into much trouble in the first place or that get out of it quickly are the most cynical. They're the most aware of how corrupt the system is. They know how to work that against the system and make sure that, your Bill Clintons of the world ain't going to jail. The people that go to jail are the most innocent, ordinary schmucks who get in the wrong place at the wrong time.
And they say, well, you plea out or we go after you for 15 years, 20 years, whatever. It's like, well, what's the plea? 18 months?
Exactly.
I got a kid I got to take care of. I got this, I got that. 18 months, probably not too long. I can rebuild. 15 years, you don't know if you're going to make it out. Maybe the people in prison aren't going to let you out. 18 months, maybe you can negotiate where you go based on the plea deal. There's a lot of factors that go into making a plea deal real enticing for people. And and then the other thing you think about is, again, if people have seen the Minnesota sentencing guideline. In my case, for example, the presumptive sentence is a stay of execution, which means that they may sentence someone. Like if I were to go in and be found guilty right now, they would sentence me to some level of some months. I think it's 44 or 48 months under the sentencing grid, but that would be presumptively stayed by the judge, which means I don't go to prison. I go home, and then I have a set of probation conditions. Well, that becomes a lot more likely if you agree and plea. But if you go to trial, they'll say, you know what? Maybe there's a factor that we can push on here. Maybe there's some aggravating thing that we can get the judge to overcome the presumption of the stay. Maybe you're dangerous to the community. Maybe this, maybe that. And you go, whoa, wait, like, so I either stay home and I have a year, 2 years, 3 years probation, or I actually go to prison. And people are faced with that decision. And if they don't have the money to fight that, and they don't have, maybe they get a good public defender, but probably not going to have a public defender with the time to invest in their case. Maybe they get one. They got to go, I roll the dice on this, and the state gets mad that I fight for my rights, and then I go to prison rather than going home. But when the state does that and they get these people to do these plea agreements, they're like, look, you don't have to go to prison. You're not dangerous. But they do get a felony conviction. They take your guns. They take your voting rights. They take your liberty. They put you under these conditions. You can't leave the state without permission. You have to report into a probation or parole officer. They may add conditions like you can't do certain things. Maybe you can't drive. Maybe you can't have alcohol. Maybe you can't have nicotine. Who knows what it is? They just have all of this authority to do it. And they just completely obliterate your natural liberty just with the threat of, well, if you don't do this, you go to prison. But the government still gets to take your rights. And that's, unfortunately, a lot of prosecutors really love the idea of getting that win. For them, it's a win. It's a bonus. They did a good job. They're not looking at it from a justice perspective. Not all prosecutors, #, but a lot of them. And it's the system that makes them that way. They don't have to be bad people.